Guys, White is a really fascinating character because he was introduced to us on the Hell Train as this regular, but we find out that he's actually like a ranker and he's combined with all of his siblings to create this higher being called White. Of course, he was known as Hoaquin on the Hell Train. There's so much lore behind this character, and I love the fact that even though he was sort of introduced as an arch villain of some kind, he ended up becoming one of the main characters of Tower of God, which I think is so cool. So today we're gonna break down all the lore and history behind who exactly is White and all the clones that make him up. If you like this kind of content, Tower of God lore, or just Tower of God in general, then make sure to hit that like button and subscribe because we upload every single day here on the channel. You know the drill. Mostly Tower of God, but also webtoon and reactions and stream content, so it's a lot of fun, and if you want to join in on that and join the 40,000 sub hype train, then definitely consider hitting subscribe. So talking about White, first of all, he is the 10th Slayer of Thug and part of the second generation of Slayers. His goal is to kill Han, his father, who he could never surpass in swordsmanship. This is exactly the reason why Hoaquin and his siblings decided to merge in the first place. Their father was basically such a bad dad. I would give him Worst Dad of the Millennium Award, but then we have Gatto, so can't exactly do that. They decided to merge to become White. They wanted to surpass their father and basically prove him wrong. Now, this is quite an ambitious goal, as their father, Han, is ranked number 5 in the entire tower, just below Uric Mazzino, okay? So out of the 10 family heads, he is the strongest, and they've even said in the series that the blood of the REA family is like the strongest of the 10 families, but they merge and become White. After traveling through the tower and becoming a high ranker and all that, White ended up sort of becoming the king of these 2 lands in the outer tower. Now, what's so interesting is we spend pretty much our entire story, except for maybe some flashbacks, in the inner tower. So tests and cities and people who talk about jihad and all this stuff, but the outer tower is massive. There are even people who exist in the outer tower that don't know that they're inside a tower. They just think, okay, we're these people who live in this land and blah, 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 and they make their own kingdoms and their own civilizations. It's crazy, and they spend their entire lives not knowing that they're on a floor of a gigantic structure, right? So White found 2 of these kingdoms and sort of ended up ruling over them, but then like leaving, and one thing led to another, and he ended up turning those countries against each other, convincing them that the other one was the cause of the other one's troubles, and this and that and this and that. It was very, like, if you go back and read the chapters, it was actually a pretty brilliant scheme in a very evil way, because nearly 1 billion people died. That's a lot of people, all right? That just, first of all, that puts into perspective how many people exist in the outer tower, but it also just shows you how evil White is. He ended up absorbing all those souls and consuming them, and that's White's thing, if you didn't know. He consumes souls to become stronger. That's kind of like his whole entire thing. Eventually, he started doing more of these crazy rituals and spells to absorb all these souls and, you know, basically killing all these innocent people, and eventually, a jihad princess was sick and tired of this evil and took him down. We don't know who it was. There's no clues or anything as to who it was. I mean, if you guys have any theories, let me know. I couldn't find anything. I mean, and from what I've seen, there's like no clues or pictures or anything that could hint as to who the Jihad Princess could be if we even know who it was. But regardless, he was taken out, and eventually he fled to the Hell Train, where he was forced to split back up into his 5 clones. He basically ran away like a coward. You know, he ran away to the Hell Train, where he ended up continuing his own story through the clones. As we know, he eventually does reunite with all of his clones. Finally, he merges with the final clone, who is his sister Albelda, combined with the countless other souls that he's eaten. They combine, but under the condition that instead of Hoaquin being in control, which we'll also get into in a bit, Albelda also has some say, or the final clone I should say, also has some say in what he does. Now, he's still in control, but he can hear her voice, so he's not entirely how he used to be. He's still an evil piece of garbage, but her influence does impact it in some way. That's sort of the one condition that she had, as far as I can remember. So yeah, White ends up teaming up with Bomb and company, kind of crazy, and his power at this state, like when he first merges with the final clone, His power is insane because he's still technically seen as like a regular because Albelda/Final Clone gave a ton of his souls to Bomb. And that combined with the fact that he had just resurrected, he was nowhere near his like old level. But he was still taking out rankers in left and right, one attack after another, one attack after another. It was insane. And eventually, he does sort of become back to his true self after Kun, Shibisu, and Hots collect a bunch of souls during this last part of Season 3 to bring him back much closer to his full strength. It's implied that he's basically back to regular strength. Well, not regular, but you know what I mean, high ranker, typical, old white strength. And he's an absolute monster, taking on Calavan, and they were pretty even, but Calavan had to sacrifice his arm, and White was nowhere near finished. Like, White is insane, one of the strongest beings in this entire tower. Now, I'm very curious, because he wants to take on Ariehan, right? But if he's barely managing to take on someone like Calavan, I don't know, I'm very curious to see how he plans on doing so. If we want to get to the root of who White is, I do think it's also important to talk about the clones, or as we know them, actually the siblings. We think they're clones at first, but they're actually just siblings who merged together. They're not all a bunch of little Joaquins, right, like we thought at first. They're just siblings. So each of these siblings wanted to surpass their father or become better. They all had their little reasons, but mostly it was about surpassing their father. And Joaquin ended up convincing them to all merge together, with, of course, Joaquin at the center. Now, Joaquin is sort of who we think of as White. He is the core personality of White. He's the one who most desperately wanted to surpass his father, and it drove him insane. He was actually, like, we see some flashbacks, he was kind of a normal kid until his dad kinda helped twist his personality a little bit. I'm not saying that he wasn't already messed up, but like, he didn't help second worst dad of the millennium. So eventually Joaquin discovers this spell that involves this ancient demon, and he ends up convincing his siblings to eat each other's souls. They just eat each other's souls in this messed up ritual, and they become White. Now, Joaquin is sort of, as we can tell, the most twisted of the siblings. He's very snobby, and he acts all high and mighty and royal and elegant, and he's better than everybody else. Obviously extremely arrogant, and he's not willing to concede any power to his siblings. He has to be the one in charge. He has to be the one to take down his father, and he's just using his siblings to gain more power. Vicente is more interesting because he isn't this sweet kid, but he's not twisted like Joaquin, right? He's the only one who was able to not be defeated by Joaquin during the training sessions. He is very good at defensive sword fighting, so Joaquin could never defeat him, which I find really interesting. But he wanted to surpass his father, he really wanted to, but he didn't like the fact that Joaquin was abusing the power he had over his siblings. He wanted to share the power, right? And he was sort of tricked into it the first time, and the second time he was like, no, we're gonna share this, you're not gonna be the one in charge. Regardless, Joaquin ends up absorbing them anyway, but Vicente is more interesting because he is more loyal to the people who help him, as we saw with Wangnan and Iwa, when they gave him candy, or I think it was chips or something, food. He was very loyal to them. He was like, even though they weren't who they said they were, they gave me food, so I'll help them. And that shows you that Vicente is kind of chill. Vicente's kind of cool. Then we have David. We know next to nothing about David. He's just another one of the siblings who apparently wanted to surpass his father, and Wangnan ended up discovering him before the dollar show, and David ended up taking over Wangnan and possessing him while trying to sort of get the upper hand on Joaquin, but then Joaquin still absorbed them anyway. So that's all we know about David. He possessed Wangnan, so pretty much the only pictures we have of him except for a flashback is just him possessing Wangnan. So when I think of David, it's funny, I just think of Wangnan with white hair. By the way, if I've ever called Joaquin white during this clone discussion, I'm sorry. They're basically the same character. One is short and one is tall. Then you have Anna, who is the little sister looking of the 5 siblings, and she's interesting because she was not very good at swordsmanship. At least Joaquin and Vicente and apparently, supposedly Daniel were able to perform very well as far as the Arie family standards go. Nowhere near their father, of course. I mean, that's pretty much impossible from their perspective or from the family's perspective. But Anna, on the other hand, was not very good at swordsmanship or something like that, so she ended up learning spells instead. She has this bunny that she carries around with her, and it's able to sort of transform into this grotesque-looking rabbit that fights with a sword, and she's able to summon all other kinds of spells and like a burning pot and all, you know. She's a spell wielder. She's not a swordsmanship REA, which is interesting. We don't see many of those. She was in fact a spell wielder because she was weak and instead turned to that. And then finally we have Albelda, who we also know nothing about except for the fact that she ended up somehow, we don't know how, merging with all of the other souls that White had absorbed during his first climb. So obviously he had to split into the 5 siblings once again, meaning he lost all those souls. All those souls sort of gathered up and formed around Albelda to create the final clone, or the last clone as we like to say. Final clone is how I'll be calling her. So she is the embodiment of all those souls, but shaped around Albelda, which is why she still looks like an REA. However, White, or Hoaquin, was like, who are you? You're not one of my siblings, right? So he didn't recognize her. I find that really interesting. Obviously, we know that the final clone ends up giving a lot of these souls to Bomb, which it's implied that this is why when White first resurrects, you know, at the last station, he wasn't at full power, probably because all those souls were missing, you know. Like I said, could also be because he was just resurrected, but Bomb did have a good chunk of those souls. It's implied like 1 billion of them. That's like as many people as he took from the kingdoms, right? That's a lot of people. So yeah, White is an abusive and arrogant and overlord character who basically was the master manipulator. He was able to manipulate 2 kingdoms against each other, and while on the Hell Train as Hoaquin, who is White's dominant personality, he was able to turn the Hell Train on itself. Everyone was killing each other except for Boros' team, and he absorbed all those souls. Meanwhile, he's basically he likes letting people kill each other, and then he just absorbs all the benefits. Kind of messed up, that's who he is. He's sort of like a protagonist now, maybe because of the influence of Albelda or the final clone, but also because of other factors, him wanting to do this and that and the other thing. But it's interesting. I don't think he's gonna be that way for much longer. Maybe after the nest, he's gonna finally try to absorb Bomb. It's heavily implied he's been wanting to eat him for a while now. I mean, Bomb has a juicy soul, and he also has all the other souls inside of him. So, but at the same time, White has also been kind of giving Bomb some like advice about how to burn souls, which is how Bomb was able to create the spirit bow. So it's like an interesting relationship and dynamic. I'm really wondering where it's gonna go from here. Also, he's talked to Hots at least once about Hots not being able to fully embrace the killing nature of being a swords wielder, and I really want to know if that's going to continue as well. I find that really interesting. So yeah, that is most of the information we have about White. Obviously, there's so much that I'm sure I missed just because White has so much lore and background. It's really fascinating. I'm sure I can make a whole other video about all the other interesting things about White. But also, one last fun fact or tidbit, White's birthday is March 14, which is known as White Day. I see what you did there, SIU. I see what you did. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to leave a like and join us on that 40,000 subscriber hype train. We're almost there. It's crazy. You guys are the best. You've been supporting my videos like crazy lately. I really appreciate that. If you want to talk more about Tower of God, we have a Discord server linked down below. It's really fun. We're trying to find new ways to improve it as well, so definitely join if you want to talk about Tower of God. And lastly, we have a Patreon where the funds from the Patreon directly support the Season 2 Tower of God dub primarily that we do every single week here on the channel. So if you want to support that and just support the channel in general, definitely check out that link below with some exclusive benefits, which are also pretty cool. All right, guys, I'll see you in my next Tower of God lore video. Take care.